For those of you who don't know me, my name is Analyse. I use the pronouns she, her, hers, and I'm a candidate for the Ministry of Word and Sacrament here in the ELCA. Throughout my candidacy and call process, one phrase has been a constant refrain in the litany of struggles this journey has put me through. Trust the process. The trouble is, the process has proven to be anything but trustworthy in my experience. My call to ministry started out as a sarcastic comment. I was in my first of 2 senior years in my theater education degree in a meeting where I was learning about how limited theater and other arts jobs were becoming in my state, and that as a result, my university was considering getting rid of the program. She went on to talk about how she was, in addition to that, going to be retiring the year that I was going to be student teaching, and by extension, so was the support that I felt from her. In that moment, I was emotionally tapped out. I started reflecting upon what it was that I was truly passionate about, and over the answers that I came up with related back to ministry. As the meeting continued and the news never got better, that's when this sarcastic comment bubbled up. Screw it, I'll just go to seminary. And I was immediately filled with abject terror. I was terrified because I was a fairly introverted kid from North Carolina, and there was no way I could possibly enough to fulfill this calling that God had on my life. It wasn't until I spoke with a friend and pastor where I confessed what felt like a sin. I was experiencing God's call in my life, and I was paralyzed by fear because of it. That evening, Pastor John smiled and said, Analyse, if you weren't afraid of what God is calling you to do in your life, I would be worried about you. 3 years later, I graduated from the Wake Forest University School of Divinity with my MDiv. I had completed a year-long unit of clinical pastoral education at Baptist Medical Center, which is one of the programs that other hospitals base their CPE programs on. But these weren't Lutheran institutions. And I was informed that I needed to take an extra year of time, student loans, moving expenses, and more in order to pursue my calling to prove that I was Lutheran enough for the Lutheran Church. This was required in spite of the fact that both my Hebrew Bible and New Testament professors are scholars from the ELCA. And that my divinity school is one of the most difficult programs to get through. And so I completed my Master of Arts in Ministry in a year at the Lutheran School of Theology at Chicago, before going on to internship at Trinity Lutheran Church in Manhattan. Despite the extra hurdles, I thought I was in an excellent position as I began the assignment process. I was told in my approval interview with the North Carolina Synod that there was little doubt that my process would go quickly, and that I had incredible gifts to offer the church. But as it turns out, it wasn't going to be that easy. In the span of 2 years, I have learned that the church finds 2 things wrong with me. 1, I identify as bisexual. 2nd, I am a white-presenting, non-Spanish speaking Puerto Rican. Neither of these identities has worked in my favor, but combined, they've made my call process an absolute nightmare. As a result, I have seen paperwork for 3 churches in 2 years, going on 3 next month. I have had 3 first interviews and 0 second interviews. In the last 8 months, I have not so much as received an email response from my assigned synod office. No one in seminary teaches you about the emotional toll the call process takes. No one prepares you to keep your composure when you are inevitably told that you are not fit to lead a Lutheran church because you identify as part of the LGBTQIA+ community. Or for the pain you feel when you're asked to consider a mission start for Spanish speakers, when you talk at length about your not growing up speaking that language and your deep-seated hardships trying to learn it as an adult. That forms a very complex and painful part of your mixed race identity. No one talks about the mess of emotions you feel when your best friend finally gets their first call. The jumble of elation, jealousy, dejection, guilt, self-loathing, and more, all rolled up into one complex, unnamed emotion. No one talks about it. Nevertheless, I was told to trust the process. No one tells you how to restrain your anger at not being heard when you receive a rejection letter from your first call committee, stating the reason they are not pursuing your experience further in this process is because, quote, they feel that your political activism would not be a good fit for their church, as they run the gamut from reactionary, conservative, moderate, liberal, and radical. While they appreciate the tone of moderation you expressed in your interview, they found your sermons, blog posts, and social media did not support the claim. Let me bring you into my first Skype interview with my very first call committee. The interview had gone well up to this point, and I was asked if I thought I would be able to moderate my political activism, something I like to call social justice work, in order to make the church feel more comfortable. I double-checked their ministry site profile, the paperwork that they send to candidates, and the top skill that they listed that they were looking for was community engagement. And my political activism was a series of protests in order to lobby the New York State Legislature to pass legislation that would close loopholes preventing wage theft in local restaurants and salons in the Upper West Side and beyond. They told me to trust the process. I did some research in about the last remaining candidates at LSTC from the fall class of 2017, where I was assigned through today. Here's what I learned. Of the 4 classes that have transpired since then, only one of those candidates identifies as straight. One identifies as gay, one is gender fluid, and then there's me, waiting the longest of the group so far, a bisexual identifying person of color. But they told me to trust the process. I wish I could tell you that finding hope in my situation has been easy. I'd be lying to you if I did. Where I found hope in an isolating series of rejections was through Extraordinary Lutheran Ministries, and specifically through Proclaim, a community of LGBTQIA+ pastors, seminarians, deacons, spouses, partners. Last week we had our annual gathering where, by the grace of God and this community of misfits, I was elected as a chaplain. We had a closing service where we were blessed, and not just us, but the gifts that we offer the church. And it was in that moment that I realized this was the first time I was going to be back in touch with the church and church work in 2 years. Where the institutional church had sown seeds of doubt, fear, and anger, and had made me distrust the process, this fringe group of queer Lutheran leaders saw the gifts I had in their midst. They supported me by asking questions about my call process, strategizing with me about how to make sure I don't become just another name on another list. And it was in Proclaim that refrain changed. They told me not to trust the process.
Right.
When my first synod assignment deemed me a monster, and my second one was too preoccupied with their own leadership transitions, this community proclaimed to me that I was enough. This community proclaimed that I wasn't too risky to be among them. This community proclaimed that I have something extraordinary to offer them and the church. And they did it as a group of people with far too many stories that are similar to my own. That's a process, indeed, a community I can trust. Please pray with me. Gracious and loving God, the history of hurt the church has caused is a lengthy one. Indeed, this church has given the LGBTQIA+ community a million reasons to walk away. We give thanks for communities in our lives that we can trust when it feels like trust is out of reach, when trusting the process is no longer healthy. Give us the strength to find communities that restore faith and hope in our lives, and fortitude to never stop fighting the fight. Amen.
Amen.
Go in peace.